Hello and well met. This is Laerun with Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to return to the Oracle of Three adventure. I'm calling this a map challenge series because I'm going to put line of sight on all the different maps that are going to be included in this adventure module. I hope to someday kickstart this or maybe even publish it. But at any rate, I want to share the experience and give people an idea of what it takes to make a creative work, especially this one's from scratch. So it's not really based on anything particular other than the DnD5e Ruleset. So without further ado, I'll just get into creating the line of sight for the maps. The maps were created by Mopsy. He's one of our community mappers if you guys are ever interested in doing commissions. This preview image up here kind of shows what type of maps I have and gives you an idea of the type of adventure scenario. I already have the image I want to work on bookmarked. Today, this is the actual interior part of the map. So it's the lair of the spider. Call it the spider lair, or something like the fallen tree spider lair. Inside of here it's a little bit of a labyrinth of different chambers. So I'm going to put in some line of sight in here. This is actually an open hole, so that's going to be like a pit. And then there's some areas that they can hide in or they get trapped in. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in line of sight. This is going to be both indoor and outdoor, only because we can see the outdoors in some cases. So I'm going to put a mask on here so that the outside light doesn't necessarily infiltrate in here unless there's a window or portal. The other thing is titling and organizing your map. So up on the very top, before I even get started, I'm going to unlock the image. Right here it says Fallen Tree Bridge _ internal, because this is the interior map. So I'm just going to put map in front of it with a comma, and then I'm going to put the name of the actual map. And on the right hand side, I'm just going to put Fallen Tree and then in parentheses internal. And that's all I'm going to put for the player. So if I click on this ID, this means that they're not going to see the traditional or the main title. They're only going to see the story title. So that's what this is for, so that when you share this image, they only see this title. They don't see the actual file title. So this is something that you may want to employ in your campaigns. The other thing I'm going to do is put a grid on it. That'll be the first step. So once I've titled everything and I like it, the reason I do that is because in the images section, I like to have these in groups so that if I see these in a list, I will be able to determine which is which a lot easier. So now that I have this title of map in here, this will make it easier for me to see what's going on when I go to take a look at this list. So it'll say map, map, map. So all these things have a function to it. So it's not just a big group of things. Looks like there's the internal map here that I had created earlier that I had set apart to do line of sight on. So this is the earlier version that I had done that is basically just allows the players to walk on top of it. So it's nighttime, that's why you can't see anything. But if I turn off the line of sight, you can kind of get an idea of what this entails. So this is walking on top of the log. So I'm going to link these two together just for convenience. And then I might turn this map the same orientation, just so it's not, straight up and down, and then this one's horizontal. So I'm going to rotate this map over here to the same orientation as the map here. So that's not too hard to do. You click on the layer itself that I'm working with. So that's this big layer here. And I'm going to rotate it either right or left. So I'm going to take a look at what I have here. So looks like I need to rotate it to the right. That sounds correct. Yep. So I'm going to rotate this map over to the right. So I'm going to go to the Layers tab, and I'm going to make sure I have this layer selected. And then I just want to take the clockwise, turn it. I clicked on it twice. It changes the orientation of the map. And now I'm just going to kind of resize the window so that it kind of fits in the space that I'm working with. and I don't have a big bunch of stuff going on. Another thing I noticed is on this topside map, the fallen tree, I didn't title it the way I should have, so I'm going to go back and say map, comma, fallen tree topside, and then over here I'm just going to say fallen tree. And that way, I'll say fallen tree bridge, because that's essentially what it is. And then I'm just going to hide the title, so when I share this image, it's not going to set anyone off. I'm going to go ahead and bookmark this so I have access to it later, because I want to link both maps together. That's an important thing to do in some cases with Fantasy Grounds. So that is that. Now I'm going to resize the frame that I'm going to be working with so I don't have to keep fighting with it. So that's an important thing to do, especially when you're working, is your workspace. Get that set up and really nice. So I'm going to stretch it out, right click on view, and then zoom to fit. And that should give it a kind of a zoomed appearance. Just make it just a tiny bit bigger, because the more real estate you have, the more you can see. You don't have to map around as much. So this is just for editing purposes. So again, I can right click, or you can use this drop down tab here and click on the zoom to fit. It'll go in the pocket just like that. So now that I have it laid out, let's take a look at the other map, see if they kind of match. So yeah, so this is the top image down here. This is the actual bridge that goes across, and then inside the log is a lair. So I'll have to decide where exactly I want to put these. So the approach on this thing is going to be from the right, or from the left to right. So when the adventurers start, I believe they're going to start on the left in most cases. So that's where the starting point of the map will be. So what I want to do, in case they go inside the log, is to put a link there for myself for more convenience. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this over and drop it next to the entrance area. And I'm going to do the same thing with the fallen tree map. Bring this over and link it to this map over here. So take this image and drag and drop it over here. So now both of these maps are linked together. So if I need to go back and forth for reference, or if I'm connecting the maps during gameplay, it's much more convenient for me to do that. So that's kind of an important step in some maps, that if you need to connect them together, you can link them to each other to make it more convenient for yourself. And now that I have this map reoriented and changed the position, I'm going to go ahead and lock it so that way it doesn't move anymore. I'm going to go to the line of sight tools, or actually in this case the grid. I'm going to lay the grid out. So this cavern here is about 30 to 40 feet wide, so we'll see how this looks. So I'm going to go to set this at 100 first, see where we're at. Yeah, it's pretty close. I think that's really close to what we want. Let's go with 75. I know I worked with Mopsy on these. I forget already what we decided on. So that's 75. Looks really good. That's a happy medium there. I might shift this down a little bit to kind of even out the distance in the walls. There we go. So you got it roughly about 40 feet across, or excuse me, 20 feet across. That's pretty good. So that works. And this is just the entrance to the lair. The log is kind of hollow, so, and that's the first step, is to set the grid. And you can see this isn't quite right, so let me play around with these numbers, and maybe it's 50. Oh, so what I want to do is take and, let's see, 5. Yeah, I think 50 was the number we agreed upon. So what I'm going to do is line this thing up a little bit better. So I'm going to unlock the grid and actually unlock the layer and go to this map layer thing and just snap it to grid. So that's just taking and moving it slightly, kind of fit in the pocket there. There we go. So 50 is the right DPI, or and that makes this a little bit bigger, so it's not so crowded in here. That's the right scale right there. So that's what you want. So it fits in the pocket, and you can kind of tell by these corners the way they line up. So That's the thing you want to look for when you're starting your map. It's important to have it placed and oriented the way you want before you start putting line of sight on it. Now I'm going to relock it and go from there. So I don't like the color of the grid. It's a little bit too washed out and gray, so I'm going to make something probably yellow. That's what I've been going lately. So I'll click on Tint, click somewhere in this yellow area, turn up the opacity just a little bit so it's a little bit more visible, not much, and hit OK. So now you can see the grid a little bit easier. It's not as washed out. These areas here are holes inside of the actual web. So when they cross through here, there's a couple spots where they could fall through into the river. So these are essentially hazards. And then also they can get stuck in the web. So there's going to be a couple traps basically in here. And then these little pockets here are where the spider sentries live, where the guards live, or the egg sac. So there's places in here where there's a little bit more danger than normal. So we'll see what happens. But this is basically just kind of a high fantasy map. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It just kind of gives you an idea of what types of things to expect when you're getting into this adventure. The premise of this map is that there is a queen spider, or like the mother spider, that has taken up residence in this big giant tree that fell over the river a couple years ago. It was full of termites, and they have since evacuated. When the tree fell over, they fled, or they drowned in the river. So there was a big flood, a big storm, and it knocked the tree over. After that, it was abandoned for a while, and the spider mother, or the princess, or whatever you want to call her, she actually decided to take up residency here. And she knew it was ideal because animals and bugs and other adventures and stuff go across the bridge all the time to cross the river. So it's one of the things that she decided was it would be a very unique area to ambush and to control. So she took up residency here, and this is her lair basically. So that's what the premise of this location is. It's also a pivotal point in the adventure too. Adventures go across. There's a major event regarding this location. So this is the first step, is getting the map oriented where you want it, and then also setting up your grid. That's the very first steps. And anytime you use maps, it is something that you'll just have to get the hang of it and used to how it works. And then if you want to, you can move the grid a little bit. So I noticed that this grid kind of favors the north more. So what I'm going to do is use the down arrow to kind of help center it a little bit better, so that it's optimizing the space on the map a lot more efficiently. And it's kind of touching this inner side here where, I mean, it's not perfect because the map actually tapers a little bit, but you'll get the full 40 feet or whatever. In this case, it's 30 feet across. So that's a useful tip too, is to arrange. Once it doesn't move the map position, but it does move the position of these. So what you could do is you could effectively just leave it that way, or you can just recenter the image. So if I unlock this, and if you're worried about the map being centered, you can always go back and click on this layer and click it back into place if you have to. But it's not critical that you have that space utilized. It could just be that way because of the way the map was drawn. But I just wanted you to be aware of that you don't have to have it dead on with the grid, but I kind of like to keep it that way so it's a lot straighter and it lines up. So I'll just leave it the way it is and go ahead and lock this layer again, and it should be done. So the next step is, what do I want to work on first? So there isn't really a door on any of these. They're kind of open. So I think I will put a doorway there just so it blocks some of the light. Or maybe not, but nonetheless, it's one of those things where you have to decide like what's important. So here, this is a hole in the bottom of this, so they have to crawl across the web to get over into this passageway, which is again open to the outside, but there's like a broken knot here, and they have to climb through here. So this is a hazard just right off the get-go. And if they shake the web in any shape or form, there might be a spider guard in here. So these are things you have to consider when you're putting in your line of sight, your walls. So I think I'll start with the walls first, and then I'll put in the other embellishments if needed. So single line, I don't need to have a double line necessarily unless I'm going to put in a secret or false door. And then in this area here where the web is, where it's weaker or where there's less land or in this case wood to walk on, I'm going to put a pit in here. So we'll just take our time. It's not a big stress thing. So I'm going to go to the line of sight tool. And in here, I'm going to go to the line tool, and then I'm in the wall tool. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just start off here in the edge of the wood and just kind of follow through here. Just once in a while, make a click point. And then in this area, I'm going to go ahead and end it because it doesn't really need to be here. Although I'll put a window in here, so I'll go ahead and just kind of go across here. That's going to be basically like a portal. You can look outside. You probably even crawl out of it. And then I'm just going to come around the edge of this thing here. And you notice I don't need a lot of points, just some, to kind of get the shape here. I don't need to cover the entire thing. I'm using the arrow key to navigate through here what exactly I want to capture. And then I'm going to just kind of casually come through and go like to the center of the wall. So it's not right at the edge. That way it's visible from both sides. And then it has some contour to it. So that's why I do have some points. Just a little bit of contour to the naturalness of the log. And then just kind of come back through here and go ahead and make this line and end it right about here. So that's just one half of the log, the walls here. Now I'm going to do the same thing out here. I'm just going to click start at this point. I come up here. I will branch off, no pun intended. I'll branch off to make this wall later, but basically I'm just going to click here. Try to use the least amount of points as possible. I mean, I might even go back and remove a couple unnecessary points, but the idea is to just kind of get a rough outline of the shape that you're trying to get. You don't need every little single contour because the art itself is going to show that. You don't have to go in and have all that in there. Unless it's a large feature, of course, then you're going to have to kind of shape it towards that. But when it comes to Fantasy Grounds, you don't want too many points on your map because it does create overhead in your memory and such, as points have to be recalculated. So I want to keep those down as much as possible. So there we go. So that's basically the major outline of it. And now I'm going to take these wall areas and just continue drawing a line. And what you'll notice is I'm going to cross over, and I'm not going to even worry about trying to connect it to the line, because by making this little vertex here, that actually makes the point, and that's what you want. You don't want it to go past or under, because then you're going to have to go back and fix it. So it's easier to just overshoot it and come back and fix it later. And the same thing with this wall here. I might actually connect it to this point since it's already set up for snap to grid. So there's that. So it's really not that stressful. I mean, just kind of coming through here and making a couple points. I mean, you don't have to have it dead nuts. I mean, there's no reason to go overboard. And over here too. So that's what I have for walls. I mean, they're really simple walls. There's really no doors. They're kind of more like portals, so that's why I don't have them closed off. There are a couple points in here where I'm going to allow light to come through. And in these areas here where the hole in the floor, or in the log in this case, is going to show through, that's going to be a pit. So there's a potential that the characters or whoever comes through here can fall through unless there's spiders or something like that. So I'll do that shortly. There is a window that I wanted to capture that was here, so I'm going to make this a window or a portal. So that's pretty much the majority of the line of sight work. It's very, very simple. It doesn't have to be very complex. You'll just drive yourself nuts if you try to make every little thing stand out like that. Like here, this might be a little excessive for points. So if I select, use the selection tool, move some of these points around. Like I can probably delete this point here if I wanted to. You know, you can do things to simplify the points on your map. So if you click on one of your points and then you click this simplify occluders, it will do that for you. So it did simplify. I just double clicked and it took out some of the points that aren't necessary. And if you need to, you can always come back and move some of the points you want to move. So in this case, I might move that a little here, move this one back a little bit. So you can adjust as you need to, but you can take out some of those unnecessary points. The little leader lines that I have here that I use to overshoot the line, you just single click on one of those and hit delete. And that cleans up those edges. So if you overshoot the line, don't worry about it. Just go back and delete the excess, so the little flag that comes off the end. Because you don't need those, and they're just there to ensure that you cross over and create this little vertice here so that when you're doing these maps, you're not going to have too many issues. Like this here, I probably don't need that, but it's part of a line, so I'll leave it. But you can see that there's not too many points, and it's enough to give you the impression of the actual shape of the room. You don't need to have every single little space mapped out on here. Like this thing here is probably unnecessary. I don't even probably need that. I mean, this point wouldn't be necessary. So you can take away, you can remove those points that you don't need. That's another option. So like this here, I can probably get away with taking this point out. Just moving it over here, selecting this point, and remove the selected point. So you don't have to delete the point, you can just remove it. So there's a delete point and remove, so they're different. Like the remove is less aggressive, like it just takes the point out, it doesn't remove the line that's connected to it. So if I remove that point, that's going to lessen the amount of these points that I have all over the map. So that's kind of the idea, is to keep this simple and don't overdo it. It's kind of what I'm putting towards you guys if you're watching. So the whole idea is to keep this really basic and fun and not so crazy. So these are just suggestions. You can do whatever you want. But I'm just going to click on these single points that stand outside of the walls or outside of the structure. So I got those cleaned up. So that's pretty simple. It's not bad. This is an open area here, so I'm going to put a doorway in here, or not a doorway, but a window. So if I go to the window tool, I'm just going to draw a rectangle. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to go right there. So that's going to be a place where light can come in if there's any outdoor light. There's a couple other spots that I spotted, no pun intended, that might have a window or something like that. So right here, there's a spot here. So if I drag this over and make like a little portal, there's another place where the sun might actually come in. And then there's just different places on the map that you might include a spot like that. I don't want to overdo it because I want this area to be dark, but I want to have a couple places in case I need to break out or something. That's pretty good. I think that's enough for windows and doors. And then when you want to remove this center line, which you'll have to do, you have to do is go back to the line tool, go back to the wall tool. I'm just going to draw a line like that to kind of make a vertice. You're trying to make a point of deletion, and I'll do the same thing. So on all doorways and windows, you put those in, and then go to the selection tool, and you just double click on any of these 3 points, click the delete button, and then the single leftover button, you just click on it and hit delete, and that'll get rid of the middle. It's really that simple. Trying to do this manually without this kind of tip, it's a really long, arduous process. So that was pretty simple. Do that to all your doors and windows, and you try to stay in one tool so you're not constantly switching back and forth between different tools. So that's kind of what you want to do is make this process a lot simpler for yourself. Like right here, I might actually draw a line in here, kind of just make this more of a cubby hole. So I'm going to go to the line here, click on here, and just that, and then I'll come over here like that. So I kind of wanted to keep a little bit of that kind of vertice here and make it look more like a little cubby hole. There we go. So that's pretty cool. It's not rocket science. It's really, really simple. The more complex you make it, the more frustrating it can get. So you don't need to make it worse for yourself. Just relax, have fun with it. There you go. So this is just one of those things that you just got to get used to. If you're spending more than an hour on a battle map, it's probably not worth your time, unless you're going to return to that map every time, because it really isn't worth the stress and all the work if you're going to have to do this for over an hour. I'm doing this for a commercial product, potentially, so I'm going to take my time and take more time with it. But if this was a map that came with an adventure, and I wanted to put line of sight on it, I don't try not to spend more than an hour. If it gets to be over an hour, you're kind of wasting your time. I think, anyways. That's just my opinion. Okay, so we have the line of sight in there, and these are open pretty much, so not a whole lot here you can do. I might in a little bit, so it kind of blocks a little bit more light. It's pretty much it. So I might do that. I might actually make a doorway on either end and just leave it open, because there's got to be a way to close these when needed. So what I might do is take a line and connect these together. So this is going to be closed off for right now. I'll close off this one. Then what I'll do is I'll come in here, adjust it if I need to. Yeah. So that is going to be where the doorway is going to be. And now I'm going to draw a door. So if I'm going to go to the door tool, I'll go to the line tool because it's not going to be a rectangular door. It's going to draw something in here to kind of give me the option to close or open this area. And I'll do the other side too. Just essentially, I want light to come in or be able to be closed. I want the flexibility. I don't plan on locking the door, but I'm going to make sure that when they come through here, I have options. So again, I'm just going to go through here and draw a line through here. I'm in the wrong tool. I want to make sure I'm in the wall tool. But again, I'm just making that little vertice there so that I can delete the. And then it's the same thing over here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the selection tool, and double click, hit delete, single click, delete. So the second dot, or the second set of the last dot that's left over, that's a single click. So double clicking selects all three points. This last final point that's on the line itself, I just single click and hit delete. So those are the door ends, basically, or the entryways. So I went ahead and decided to put those in just so I have some, so I can block some of the light that comes through. So the next step is to put a mask over this, because if you don't, and I'll show you why, it will affect the lighting inside. So I want to go to the lighting tool, and then in the lighting tool, I'm going to go to ambient light. So the ambient lighting tool is to allow you to adjust or to set up the outdoor lighting. So I want to change the preset to daylight or sunlight. And then I'm going to put a mask on it shortly, but if you don't put a mask, what's going to happen is when you have your line of sight on, you're not going to have so you can see the shadow already from the outdoor ambient lighting. So you don't want that, because unless this is open to the sun, there's no reason to have this all open out. So what I'm going to do is put a mask on this so that the outdoor light doesn't come in and affect the indoor. So the lighting indoors will be separate than the outdoors. The only way to do that is if you're in the lighting tool and then you go to ambient lighting. Right now I'm in the sunlight. I'm going to put a mask over the whole thing, and I'm just going to hide the area for the actual map itself. So I'm just going to make one big huge rectangle, and then I'm going to put in these little side things. So I'm just going to come in here and do something like this, which is going to affect the lighting so that it doesn't shine inside. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to hold the Alt key and just draw in these areas here, because these are not perfectly square. And that's all I'm going to do, is just kind of roughly come through here and block out the outdoor lighting. So this is a step that you want to do with your maps if you have it featuring indoor and outdoor features. So again, I'm in the lighting area in the ambient light. I put a mask on here, and now I'm blocking or adding the mask to the areas that I don't want to have affected by the outdoor ambient lighting. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is taking these lines and joining them with the structure. So I want to capture that area. So you don't have to do it in one go. You can do it in groups. So it's one of those things. Get used to it. So I'm holding down the Alt key while I'm tracing around so that I don't have to have any problems when I'm making this masked area. I don't want to cause myself more work and frustration. So this is going to help block out the sun or any sort of ambient light. So again, hold down the Alt key if you have an area that's rounded or it's not perfectly rectangular. As you saw, I just went ahead and did a whole big section, and then I came back and did the smaller one. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you're going to use ambient lighting from outside. So now when you go back in here, this way the lighting is not impacted by the outdoor lighting. That's what you want. Except for windows and doors. Like if I open this door, this window, which I'm going to do now, it will allow for lighting from the outside. So if I open these up, close them, any ambient light, if it's shining the right way, it will affect that. So let's go back here. I'm going to open up the end here and this other window. Yeah, so these are now open. So it's not really a closed area, but it gives you the option if you want. All right, so that's that. So that's part of this map. And now I'm going to create the actual pit. So if I go to the line of sight tool and then I go to the pit tool, I'm just going to draw a line around here and just kind of draw a rough area of where I want the pit to affect players when they come through here. So that'll be one zone where they can potentially fall through in the river. Here's another larger one. This one's more of this one affects more of the map, so this will give them a lot more problems than the others. So this is meant to be here by design. I asked Mopsy if he put these in so that it creates a challenge for the players. When they come through here, they can't just run through. So plus they have the webs to contend with. So that's basically there's a few pits in here that faces the river down below, and when you come across here, if you try to just run through, you'll not only get stuck in the web, but you have a chance of falling through. I'm going to make a NPC or hazard or something like that. So you could avoid some of this trap by kind of going around the edges of it, but it also takes more time. So they're probably going to be in pursuit. So that's something that you'll have to consider when you're creating your encounter. But you want to make this kind of kind of harrowing and scary for them. So that's what this is about. Kind of make them panic and make mistakes, basically. So that's basically where the pits are, and when they come through, they'll get stuck in there. They won't be able to move. They can move within the web, but they'll be reduced on their movement because of the webbing itself, unless they have spider climb or some sort of ability. That's basically how I'm going to set up the line of sight for that. And now I'm going to make the water underneath the bridge, so I'll do that. But this is basically how you put in the line of sight. It's really not too bad. Take a lot of time. All the line of sight in this case is on the actual map layer. It's all contained in one thing. I can turn off the line of sight just by clicking on the little brick wall if I want. And then I'm going to potentially make maybe some kind of effect for the water below. I kind of want that effect in there. So this will probably take me a little bit more time because I'm going to have 2 sections to do. And then I'm going to have a group of areas or some kind of terrain on the edges here. Maybe. I don't know if it's necessary, but I might put terrain out here on the edge here. We'll see. So let's go to the effects tool. So down at the very bottom, there's the effects button. I'll click on that. It makes a new effects layer. There's nothing assigned yet. And then I'm going to click on the effects option, click the drop down, and click on water. And what you'll notice is the entire map will have this like wiggling kind of water effect. That's not exactly what you're going to be doing. So we're going to put a layer on top, put a little bit of blur that blurs the edges of the boundaries. And I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and do some customization. But what I'll do first is I'll take this area, this larger area, and just kind of make that reveal the water effect. And this kind of slows or kind of makes it so it's easier to do a majority of the water as you're going through the map, because it take a while if you're using the control key. So that gets a majority of it covered. So basically you can illustrate where the water is. Come through, fix this later, just get a majority of it allocated for this type of effect, and then you can come back and fine tune it. So I'm just kind of getting a majority of the water going here. There we go. And then you can come into these smaller areas and kind of work your magic in there. So what I'll do is I'll hold down the Alt key and just kind of come around the edge. You don't want to be right on the very edge of the object. You want to kind of leave a little bit of a buffer. And I'll do the same around here. So around the periphery here, I'm just going to come through, create this area like this. So you have contour. And again, hold down the Alt key and just Control Z. And I'm going to hit Alt and back through. Did it again. Okay, let's try it again. So Alt. Let's draw this out. So it kind of considers this area in here as water. And the reason I'm doing it on the branches is because I kind of like that movement. It kind of gives them the illusion that there's water below a little bit easier. It may not be optically correct, but it does give them the impression that there's running water. Again, I'm going to hit the Alt key. It's here. Voila. Let's see if I can grab some of this. And so this part actually takes a little bit longer because I'm having to trace around the contour of these inner parts a little bit picky. See, I kind of got a little bit close here, but I'm not going to worry about it. Again, kind of coming around here. So all these are going to join into one big mask. So you can do it in groups. You don't have to do it in one fell swoop. So I'm just kind of taking the edges that I couldn't include in the square or in the rec. There we go. And then what you can do is you can adjust this a little bit so that it's not too crazy. Like I said, I put some blur on it that gets rid of the edge, because if you don't, there would be too much of a obvious edge. So just kind of turn it down just a hair. It's not too crazy. Got this reflective surface. And I thought about putting this kind of this distortion around the edge of the rocks where the river is flowing past these rocks, but I don't even think that's necessary. So that's basically the water tool and that sort of thing. And then when you actually have line of sight enabled and your players are on the map, this is what they're going to see. And then when they actually go into this area, if they have any infravision or dark vision, or if they have torches, they'll see in here. That's why it's so dark. So if I turn off the player view, that's what it's going to look like for Game Master. So it's going to be pitch black in there until they get through some of this. And then there's, of course, there's the sunlight. So this is actually going north. So the sun is going to come from this direction. So what that means is in the ambient shadows, in the length of the shadow, I'm going to make it like 10. And then I'm going to change the direction a little bit. So it's going to be at 200 and looks good. So this is the shadow that's coming off the low. The sun is coming from this northeast, or northwest in this case. Makes sense though. Maybe it's come over the top of the forest. It's getting ready to set west. So that's basically what the shadows do. And if you wanted to put some kind of mask on there, yeah, and you can. So this is going to be the river water. So that's what I'm going to put here. Just going to put the river. Want to name or label your edits if you can. Makes it a little bit better. And then lock it when you're done so it doesn't get messed up. There we go. So that's pretty much a majority of the line of sight that I'm going to need for this map. I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. If you want to see the map without all the different lighting effects on it, you can turn off these things and take a look at the map itself. But when you enable line of sight and the outside lighting, you're putting in the ambient light and then the walls and stuff too. So, and this is the GM view. If you want to go to the player view, you click there. And then to test these maps, so I'm going to go ahead and lock the map for right now. And I'm going to resize it so that it's more conducive to using it for adventure, or just kind of like how you would have it in gameplay. We center it and bring up the combat tracker. So I have a party token here where I can test this out. So if I come and put this on the map and I claim it, this is what the players will see. Isn't a whole lot. But once they go in, they're going to be blinded unless they have a torch or some sort of vision. So if I come up to the effects area, I can temporarily put on a candle just so I can get an idea of how the line of sight looks. And then when I go back to claim this token, when I come through here, you can kind of see the candle light illuminating. Oops, now I got stuck in the pit. So as the game master, I have to hold shift to let them go through this area. Or you can toggle it in the settings to let them break free. And then they come through here, and so you can see the line of sight from the outside, and it's not being affected by anything out here. And if they come up close to this window, they can see outside into the river, or into the side of the riverbank. So here's some egg sacs. We're probably going to put some baby spiders. So that's going to be kind of fun. So that's how you test this stuff out. Just putting a token on there with some light. So that's, yeah. So that's it. I think I'm pretty much done with this. I just wanted to give you an idea of what this process is like. Once I have the line of sight done and completed, I can come back, and if you select one of your layers and you right click, or if you have, in this case, you can just click on it I'm going to turn on the, here's a line of sight. You can actually export this metadata, and it will be a XML file that will have all the definitions for line of sight lighting and stuff in that definition file. And you can share that definition file or put it in the same folder as the image. So if you export this, or you have some problems with it, you'll have that XML file, so it will stay with the file itself. So no matter where you put it, it will take on those characteristics. You have to have it in the same directory or the same folder, and it has to have the same title as the map. So that's part of the caveat for using the XML. But there you go. So that should be it. So this was episode 5. If you want to watch some of the other episodes, there's a playlist on YouTube. I'll update this shortly after the stream. Also, in a few weeks or a couple weeks, we're going to have Mapper's Delight 3, which is going to feature a bunch of talented cartographers from all over the world. That'll be the 19th on a Saturday, so a few weeks from now. That'll be a lot of fun. We're going to have some prizes. Dungeon Fog is going to be our sponsor, and Smiteworks is giving out a gift or a prize, so this will be a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested in that, we'll have that live on Twitch, or we'll archive it too. So this will be the 3rd one that we did. Anyways, that is the Fallen Tree Bridge, the internal one. This is where the spider lair is. When I get done with all the maps, I'm going to start working on the encounters. And that's kind of the process, is you want to do all the different steps and creating the stories, and doing all the stuff in one area, so you're not bouncing back and forth too much. And you remember earlier in the map, or earlier in the show, I linked these 2 maps together. So if I click here, it should bring up the external map. And if I click on that link, it brings up the internal map. So linking these things together is very important. When I'm done with all the maps, I'm going to link them to the big area map. So if I go back to my images, and then I go to basically the main map, which is going to be like a handout, there's a map for the actual setting itself. So the Oracle of 3 is just an adventure that I'm working on. So there's a bee-folk thing that I still need to do. I think I did the ants lair, but here's a map that's in the city for Kedwick's Crossing that I did in one of the other episodes. So there's a major or a larger map that has all of the locations in it. So this is a regional map here. And then I'll link all of the different locations. Like here's the Fallen Tree log here that I'm working on. And I'll have those linked to this main map here. So when you're running the adventure, you can use the party token to kind of give a rough idea of where your group is at. And here is the Rangers camp. We've already done the map for that. This is the Kedwick Crossing here. So these are just different locations in the adventure, the main ones. So I don't have a map for everything. And I have this Mothman encounter here. So if you go to this point, there'll be a pin there. So when the DM brings the party to that location, let's say if you've traveled through the forest and made it to that location, you bring that map up, and it'll be a pin there, or a shortcut. So the Mothman thing is, let's see, here's the Fey Mothman area. So this is another map that's mostly outdoors, with some mushroom caps and a big huge stump here. So these are just some things that I'm going to include in the adventure. So hopefully I'll get it done someday. Anyhow, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of your holiday, and I hope that give Fantasy Grounds a chance if you haven't already. It's a pretty good program. It takes a little bit to get used to it. The key is to play around with it and to actually use the software. That's really what it takes to get used to it. So this will be the 5th episode. I'll put this on the playlist, and if you guys want to go back and watch some of the others, you're welcome to. Thanks for doing the videos. Yeah, no problem, Greg. They're kind of fun to do occasionally. This is a really casual thing. Wasn't really meant to be a tutorial, but I wanted to share the process so that if you have to do this for your own content, or if you want to play around with existing content, the whole thing is scope. Like, are you going to make a whole map and do all the details, or are you just going to use an existing map and those sort of things? Just different approaches on doing this. So hopefully that helps. This helps a little bit. And there's other videos on YouTube that we've made that are a little bit more teaching type thing and more direct on how to use the map tools. But I wanted to show you what it's like in a casual sense, so it's not just do this and then you do that. And, sometimes that's not a good way to learn. Sometimes it's good to look at things organically and not just have a bunch of information shoved at your face. So anyhow, take care, everybody. Have a good weekend.